We got our friend Sean Parnell with us now, combat veteran, all around badass, American patriot, host of the Battleground podcast on the Clay and Buck Network, which is doing phenomenal numbers. Thank you all for listening in. Sean does a great show. And Sean, appreciate you being with us here. You, me, Clay, we all have one thing in common other than being dashingly handsome. And that is and we are all friends of Pete Hegseth and are hoping that he is able to take the reins as Secretary of Defense. You know, you're a warfighter, a true combat veteran. I wrote a great book about it, Outlaw Platoon, which I have read every word of. And I just wanted to give you the floor to speak about not just, yeah, you're pro Pete, we're pro Pete, but from the warfighter perspective, I'm seeing so many special operations guys, so many guys with many combat tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere who are saying we've got to give this shot to Pete. We've got to put him in the role. Why is that?
Pete's a warfighter. I mean, plain and simple. I mean, I've known Pete Hegseth, Buck, Clay for a very long time. I mean, we were both in the infantry around the same time together. And we worked at Concerned Veterans for America during the exact same time period that these supposed fake allegations, all this stuff happened in the New Yorker. And what I know about Pete and what has been true about Pete for a very long time, guys, is that he has a deep, abiding love of the warfighters. He appreciates the people who are in the trenches, who are on the front lines, front towards enemy. He appreciates the people who do the heavy lifting in the military. And that doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, certainly not talking about the people with stars on their shoulders, but the actual warfighters. And what's I think so brilliant about the Hegseth pick here is that he is an outsider. He's somebody that thinks outside the box. Having worked with him before, he is very, very reform-minded, and he understands the issues both of the Pentagon and the military, and he knows what it feels like to have a bullet cracked by his head, so that matters too. But he understands these policy issues in a very deep and substantive way, and I think that bodes well for his prospects through the confirmation process and when eventually he gets confirmed in a Secretary of Defense. So all of these things are great things, but beyond all of that, I just love the guy. He's a good man. He's a good husband. He's got a great family, and I think he'll be great for the job.
I want to dive in with you because I saw you tweeting about this, and we just talked about it a couple of minutes ago. West Point, the public affairs group or whoever they are, tried to undercut Pete Hegseth's nomination by reaching out to media and saying not only is Pete Hegseth lying about getting into West Point, he never even applied. And then Hegseth posted the letter of admission that he received on social media. Good for him that he still has it because, not that I got admitted that many places, but I have no idea what happened to any of my admissions letters. Yeah. I got rejected a lot of places for law school, too, by the way. I don't know what happened to those either. But what's going on here? Like, Sean, he would theoretically be in charge of the United States Military Academy, Democrat, Republican, whatever else it is. The fact that they tried to sabotage him, somebody needs to get fired here. We need an investigation into what happened.
I mean, this is precisely why you need somebody like Pete, because these are once venerated institutions, the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. They have been infested with these radical leftists in key positions for quite some time now. I'm not talking about everybody in the Pentagon or at the United States Military Academy. I'm not painting with broad strokes here, but the folks, there are lots of decision makers in West Point that are radical leftists that put the radical leftist agenda before, in this case, the military, the mission of the United States Military Academy. And you described it perfectly, Clay. This was somebody at West Point trying to undermine an incoming president-elect's pick for Secretary of Defense who would theoretically be in charge of West Point to try to tank his nomination. That was the motivation behind this. And ironically enough, this is precisely why we need an outsider and a guy like Pete to root out this radical leftist infestation at the Pentagon and and focus the mission of the United States military on lethality. first, last, and always. Get us back to our warfighting mission. Get rid of all the DEI stuff. Get rid of all the pronoun stuff. Get rid of all the stuff that is a distraction to the warfighter, and focus on the mission. And in the case of West Point, the mission is raising up officers who embody duty, honor, country, service, selfless service, sacrifice, not focused on tanking political nominations.
Speaking of Sean Parnell, Battleground is his podcast on the Clay and Buck Network. Go subscribe to the network and look for Battleground. Give it a listen. You will love it. Sean, let's talk politics for a second here. I mean, we kind of were in a sense, right? They're trying to block Pete for political reasons, but more in the electoral politics side of things. We were just discussing Pennsylvania. Amazing work Scott Pressler did. Your home state delivered. We got a great new senator coming in with Dave McCormick. Fetterman, you're familiar. You ran for Congress, right? You know the deal, the political landscape in Pennsylvania very well. Fetterman is saying a lot of sensible stuff, and people get sometimes a little mad at those like me who will just say, "Look, what he said is good." I don't know. Is he not? Do you think he's actually changing the way he views things, or is this just a gamut? Is this just something that he's doing because he sees where the political winds are blowing? Like, how would you assess this? Because he's definitely not saying the woke stuff these days.
He definitely, I'll just say this. He definitely sees the way that the political winds are blowing, and knows that he has an election coming up in 2028. And just do the simple math. From 2020, 650,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. In 2024, that number is 300,000 and change. So still a lot more Democrats than Republicans. But look, Republicans just won the state up and down the ballot, a clean sweep of Republicans in Pennsylvania in 24. So in another 4 years, I mean, this state could be even Republican, Democrats, and that makes the state very, very tough for him. So John Fetterman is going to have to do some things to reach across the aisle, give conservatives some, quote unquote wins, while simultaneously voting the way that the Democrat Party wants him to vote. And to me, that's the key differentiator. Don't listen to the things that John Fetterman says. Like, he says some cool, catchy stuff that conservatives like to latch on to, but watch how he votes. A good example of this is Israel. He waves the Israeli flag all the time, but he votes against aid for Israel in the Senate over and over and over again. So you can't, in many cases, listen to how the Democrats talk. You have to watch how he votes. So Buck and Clay, if he starts voting with the Republicans, then I'll take him a heck of a lot more serious than the way he is now. But the last thing I'll say about John Fetterman is this, and I'll give him a compliment. John Fetterman is one of the few elected officials, especially now on the Democrat side of the aisle, who seem totally out of touch with reality on most things. But John Fetterman really, truly does understand Pennsylvania. And so I will give him credit for that. And for that reason alone, it makes him a very formidable politician. And so the fact that he's this forward thinking, sees the numbers, sees that the state is trending right, the fact that he's already thinking about this in 24 for a cycle in 28 just gives you a sense that he does have some political strategy up here. He does understand the state. He understands the demographics, and so makes him formidable, and Republicans should not take him for granted.
Sean, I know we're 4 years out from a major election, but how durable do you think the new calculus, the new math is for Pennsylvania? You mentioned that you think the state is tilting red. Trump, 120,000 vote win in the state of Pennsylvania. It was close, but it was a major statement win. How much of that is Trump, and how much of that is the overall trajectory of Pennsylvania moving in a Republican direction?
Well, so a lot of this is Trump. And I think part of our job moving forward in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is try to preserve this crazy coalition, cross-section of people that only show up for Trump. Our job moving forward is to figure out how to get those people to the ballot box each and every cycle, not just in midterms, but in off cycles as well. Consider this, all the work that we did with early votes and mail-in ballots this cycle. Dave McCormick, he won 27 counties in vote cast by mail. Of the 67 counties in Pennsylvania, McCormick won 27. Dr. Oz in 2022 won 2. But in those 27 counties that Dave McCormick won, his margin of victory was 21,000 mail-in votes. That was greater than a statewide margin of victory. So what we did in Pennsylvania, in addition to President Trump just being very strong at the top of the ticket, what we did for Dave McCormick and Republicans down ballot was literally the difference. And so you don't see this same dynamic playing out in Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, and other places. But what we did in Pennsylvania made the difference. And so we're going to have to focus on all of the, hey, vote by mail, early vote operation, continue banging the drum on voter registration, getting low prop voters to the polls, and continuing to cobble together this very eclectic coalition that Trump brings to the table, because that is the base of our party now, and we've got to serve them well.
What are you hitting on Battleground Podcast this week, Sean?
We're going to talk about Pete's confirmation process, actually all of President Trump's cabinet nominees, and the fact that it's very rare for cabinet nominees to be voted down by Democrats or Republicans, but we've let the media gaslight us into believing that that's possible this cycle. So we're going to go into the politics on all of that. So we're Monday through Friday on the Clay and Buck podcast network. And by the way, guys, very grateful to be there. So thank you both very much for the platform. And
thanks for making us look good by building a huge audience super fast. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, it's an honor to be with you guys.
Thank you, Sean. Go check out Battleground Podcast, guys, and join the Sean Parnell revolution. In Wall Street circles, there's a name that you may not have heard of, but you should. Brad Thomas. This is a guy who distinguished himself by establishing his own New York Stock Exchange listed ETF. And that's a pretty big deal. In his ability to help a network of investors help them find their way to increases of 40% or more over a number of years. Brad's an expert in the world's largest asset, an asset that's actually bigger than stocks and bonds combined. So Brad is on a mission to help you with this asset class as an everyday investor, and he's sharing insights he's gained from his network of very connected, very wealthy people. Brad is opening membership to his research in a whole new way. Begins with his top investment opportunity, which could deliver huge gains as the new administration moves into the White House. He insists it's one of several investments you must move your money into before the end of 2024. Go to bradalert.com. That's bradalert.com. Brad Thomas has agreed to share this information with you. One more time, bradalert.com, paid for by Wide Moat Research.